The UK plans to ramp up weapon production for Ukraine and Western defence as Lord Cameron reveals an envoy will oversee the national priority. I'm going to read into this exclusive from Sky News, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with an exclusive from Sky News with the headline of the UK plans to ramp up weapon production for Ukraine and Western defence as Lord Cameron reveals the envoy will oversee the national priority. The Foreign Secretary has pledged a new envoy to drive up defence production in the UK on behalf of the Prime Minister. Speaking to Sky News, he said the world was facing a tipping point and that overcoming the war in Ukraine was crucial for Western security. Guys, while you're here, make sure you hit the like button and share this across social media so others are notified of this video. So for those who are not aware, I've covered extensively, obviously overseeing what's happening due to the conflict in Ukraine, whether it's from short videos or on the Snowflake Corner or the World's News Round, where we cover extensively some of the latest stories that are normally taking place within there. And at the time of this recording, Ukraine are struggling in the Donetsk region. In other regions in the current conflict, Ukraine are able to kind of hold to a certain extent, but it's more in the Donetsk region where they're really struggling to hold ever since the city of Avdiivka had fallen, the town of Avdiivka. They've been able to push and continue to push forward Russia, even though to some people it's only small gains. It's still gains for Russia at the end of the day, and they obviously intend to push and take as much of that region as they can. There have been one of the targets is that, according to Ukrainian sources, Russia wants to claim at least the whole of Donetsk by the end of this year. Whether they will or not, we'll obviously have to wait and see. Even though that the recent US package has been approved by Congress to help support the conflict in Ukraine, it's still going to take a while for things to come through. And also, Ukraine, one thing that Ukraine has been struggling with has been with manpower in comparison to Russia, who have literally thrown hundreds and countless of bodies at this situation as well. Now, it's very important to make clear that while it is welcoming, obviously, that the US have their own package, and while it's great that the UK are doing their part in helping Ukraine, we're not doing it on the level of Germany, for example, in terms of support. Germany have pledged a lot more than we have, but that doesn't mean to say that we haven't done our bit. But it's obviously the question is, and understandably people have in the comments, is like, I understand the frustration that people have about us supplying weapons, supplying support for Ukraine in the way it has, but you have to remember that this is a European country, that they are one of our European neighbours, one of our neighbours and allies in Europe, and we should always try to help our neighbours. And remember, this was they declared war on Russia, declared war on Ukraine. They took territory. They've taken territory from them, territory that does not belong to them. And we should try to help Ukraine in the best way possible. And nobody wants Russia to succeed. We don't want Russia to succeed. What we want is things to be back before they were. You know, we want Ukraine to have its territory back and Russia to basically be able to be where it was before. But obviously, it's not as simple as that. And it may come down to, in the end, a negotiation where Ukraine will just have to give up territory. But when we come to that path, we'll cross paths with that. This story here is in particular about the UK's plans. So, is it right that we ramp up weapon production for Ukraine and Western defence? I do think it is important. I don't think it's an exaggeration that Russia could be looking for more targets after Ukraine if it succeeds. I don't think it's an exaggeration. I think it's something that we do need to take seriously. I understand the other thing that I've seen in a few of my comments as well, is that because of where we are geographically and because we're an island, a lot of people are saying, why do we need to do anything? Well, just because they're far away now doesn't mean that they can't get closer. And I think, and then one of our things we need to obviously look at, is we've talked about this before, is about the military force, something that we need to address as well. But how much of this weapon production and whatnot that David Cameron's talking about here, how much of this is coming out of the defense budget? Like, are we spending too much on it? I think that's another question that we need to ask ourselves. But I am still in favor of us supporting Ukraine as best we possibly can. I don't think it's just enough about giving weapons and supplying aid. I don't know if it's becoming enough for them, because the question is, when does the fighting stop? When is victory achieved as such for Ukraine? Is it when they get all their territory back? If they can get all their territory back. Zelenskyy has always said that he wanted Crimea back, that he lost back in 2014 as well. So there's also that question as well. So that's a question that's still to be had, because Russia want to ensure control in the Black Sea. Well, they didn't have that much. They didn't have didn't have that as much when they gave up the Crimean Peninsula to. When they didn't have the Crimean Peninsula to Ukraine, and now they've got it back, they have a lot more. They had a lot more control. So there's lots of questions, but never enough answers. But let's read what David Cameron's had to say in this exclusive here, guys. So the UK will appoint a new envoy to oversee a plan to ramp up the production of weapons and ammunition, which is now a national priority, the Foreign Secretary has revealed. I'd take a hold on a second. Straight off the bat there, I would not call this a national priority. It is a priority for the people of Ukraine, but I would not go as far as to call it a national priority. I think our priority, if you ask British people what their main priority would be, cost of living crisis, healthcare system, out of control police force. Some people will say obviously immigration, but I would not call this a national priority. No, I would not. Lord Cameron, speaking on a visit to Ukraine, also underlined the importance of supporting the Ukrainian war effort against Russia, warning that the world was at an absolute critical tipping point and Kyiv must prevail, or else Europe faces a very dangerous future. However, he cautioned against the idea of French President Emmanuel Macron to consider sending NATO troops to Ukraine to join the fight if Russia Vladimir Putin achieve a breakthrough, in saying that such a move would be a dangerous escalation. Now, it would be a dangerous escalation, but at the same time, what's to stop? Like, people think that there's this premise that people have, if Russia takes Ukraine, that they will stop there, they won't invade anywhere else. You honestly don't think that. You think he's going to be satisfied with that? No, he's going to be eyeing up Baltic states. He's going to be looking elsewhere. He will not settle with Ukraine, that is for sure. People think he's going to settle. He's lying to you. I don't think it's right to have NATO soldiers killing Russian soldiers, the Foreign Secretary said in an interview in the western city of Lviv on Friday, having met President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and other top ministers in Kyiv on Thursday. Yeah, I can understand that. I can totally understand that premise. We are practically, if the British and French forces, for example, were in this conflict, you're practically in the war. There's no two ways about it. You're practically in the war at that point. Lord Cameron made the two-day trip to reaffirm the UK's commitment to Ukraine, in which most recently includes a promise to transfer more of the British military's own stockpiles of weapons, including precision-guided bombs and air defence missiles. The UK has also promised at least £3 billion worth of military assistance annually, but Western allies are failing to deliver munitions to Ukraine's front line as quickly as Russia is rearming its military, with Russian troops gaining ground in the east in recent months. Yeah, we've spoken about that already. President Putin has put his economy on a war footing when he launched his full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, something NATO allies are only slowly starting to move towards. Rishi Sunak said last week he would increase the UK's defence spending 2.5% of national income by 2030, claiming this equates to an additional £75 billion in investment. In terms of the UK defence spending, it was 2.7% under last Labour government, just for reference there. He also said he was putting the UK defence industry on a war footing and added £10 billion of new funding would be dedicated to domestic munition production over the next decade. Asked how Britain could force defence companies like BAE Systems, Pfizer and Burkop have to answer their shareholders and not the government to increase production lines at the request rate and scale without some kind of legislation to force them to act. Lord Cameron revealed the plan for a new special envoy for defence production. There is a specific munitions strategy of £10 billion which will do exactly what you are talking about, the ramping up of production, he said. But crucially, I think we can go further that in terms of specific defence envoys with the ability from the Prime Minister to go out and make sure we are doing these multi-year deals with the defence supplies, because we need not only provide more weapons to Ukraine, but we need to build up our own stocks. So this is very important. This is a national priority. I do think, that we also need to have some munitions obviously kept for ourselves. Obviously, that's totally understandable. But I'm not going as far as to call it a national priority. And Prime Minister is giving the lead, and I think the industry will respond. Pushed on whether this new envoy, whose identity has not yet been revealed, would be the modern-day equivalent of someone like Lord Beaverbrook, who was tasked with expanding aircraft production during the Second World War. Lord Cameron said it's the 21st century, so there won't be a Lord Beaverbrook. But he signalled that the envoy's ability to approach industry with a commitment to fund multi-year contracts for munitions would be key, and will also drive down costs. If it drives down costs, that I'd say I'm all for that as well. But yeah, you would like these private companies to. We want private companies to do their part as well. To be fair, it is possible to go to defensive contractors and say to them, "You are not going to get the price you might have hoped for year after year after year, because we're going to make a contract with you over the coming years to make sure we replenish our ammunitions, our artillery, our long-range fire." I miss all these crucial things vital for Ukraine, but also vital for our own defence. Asked for why the government needs appointing a special envoy to this role, Lord Cameron says, "I think you need to have a direct line to the Prime Minister to make sure that we are making this the national priority it clearly is." And Cameron warns of a dangerous future. Turning to the war in Ukraine, the Foreign Secretary said Europe's face two futures, one in which Ukrainian forces backed by Western weapons are able to push the Russian invaders out of what he calls a just peace. That is a footing that we can just see great security and prosperity for us and for Europe, he said. But he warned a future in which Putin is successful and that Ukraine is pushed back, I think, is a very dangerous future. Nations such as Moldova and even NATO states of the Baltics would be worried that President Putin might turn his attention towards them next, Lord Cameron said. In addition, the authoritarian regime in Iran and China would be watching closely. I think there are absolutely crucial tipping points in global affairs, Lord Cameron added. I do think that there's absolutely no question that Iran and China are definitely watching this. We obviously know, for those who have been aware, obviously China wants Taiwan. They want that land back, and they consider themselves the rightful China, right? Not rightful communist China, but the Taiwanese people consider themselves the rightful China as well. And one thing that Xi Jinping over there in Asia, he will no doubt, in my opinion, will want Taiwan before his time as leader ends. So when it will happen, I don't know. He obviously wanted to do it. Understandably, they would rather have done it diplomatically, but they may do it by military force if need be. Obviously, there is lots of allies around Taiwan. Obviously, the US have plenty of defenses around those areas, if ready to step in if that invasion ever occurs. But it is still going to be a very crucial. It's going to be very intense, that's for sure, if China does go for Taiwan at some point. And obviously, Iran, for their part, they have been supplying Russia with lots of drone parts, lots of drones for their part. So they played a role in helping Russia with their attacks in Ukraine, as well as North Korea has been supplying weapons and arms as well. There's been obviously as well, because of their relationship between them. I still have not seen any evidence or reports of Chinese weapons or arms being used in the conflict by Russia in Ukraine. Now, maybe some people have, but I've not seen any of that. But we know that China and Russia have a strong relationship there as well. But that being said, obviously, just coming back to this story here, I think a part of me is like, I understand what David Cameron is saying, but a part of me is just like, is this a real priority right now? And I think the vast majority of people in the UK would say no, given the situation that many people are in with the cost of living crisis, healthcare, police, etc. that is not a priority to them. Yes, they understand that there is concerns about Russia and its aggression in Europe. I'm sure that people are concerned about that. But I think people will be more concerned about their own well-being than what's happening in Ukraine. I don't think it's selfish of people to feel that way. I think it's just how some people are. I think there are general people out there who want Ukraine to succeed. They want to succeed in this war. But at the moment, it's kind of difficult to root for Ukraine while also, we're giving up money, weapons, and supplies and whatnot to them. And while some people here in England, understandably, are struggling to feed their own kids, so you can understand why some people feel aggrieved about us supporting Ukraine the manner it is when you're not getting the help that you need right now. So it's understandable to feel that way. But I would point fingers at the British government for those accountants rather than blaming Ukraine for that, if I'm honest. But what do you guys honestly think? What do you make about the UK's plans to ramp up weapon production for Ukraine and Western defence and our own defences here? What do you guys make of what's been happening in the conflict in Ukraine? Let me know your thoughts and more about all this in the comment section down below. If you found this video informative, please hit the like button. We greatly appreciate it. Share this across social media so others are notified of this video. And subscribe, because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further, financially support me in the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p. Or join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content there as well. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope to catch you all very, very soon.